Come in, grab a chair at the table. Welcome, my dear smutty buddies, to another thrilling adventure through the world of romance literature. Today, we're delving into the fascinating realm of character development in dark romance novels. Dark romance takes us on a roller coaster of emotions, and these characters often teeter on the edge of morality. We'll discuss today why these complex characters hold such a grip on our hearts and our nether regions.
All of the regions, all of them.
So, Miss MyDys, today the different ways we're discussing these characters.
So we're going to talk about growth and transformation of characters in dark romances. We're going to talk about some of their deepest flaws and their journey to their redemption or not. And we're going to explore how authors craft these arcs, right? It's an exciting thing to talk about, especially in our space. We talk about all the time being readers who love and prefer and gravitate towards dark romance. Why choose romance and taboo romance? That's our happy spot. So we have a lot to say about this.
Yeah, let's start with the complex characters. Dark romance characters are very rarely one-dimensional. They possess a range of emotions, motivations, and traits that make them captivating. For instance, our brooding anti-hero of the novel, a dark romance novel, may display tenderness, vulnerability, or even a very dark sense of humor that adds to the depth of their character. They often come with heavy baggage, such as traumatic experiences or unexpected lifestyles. And that's not just gangs. That could be gangbangs. Readers are drawn to these.
Hopefully it is.
Readers are drawn to these characters because their past shape who they are in unique ways. Yeah. Some of the women that we see in dark romance that kind of fit this narrative are Jessie from the Ryan Rules series. She is introduced to us as a hacker who's been kidnapped by the Russians, who then unfolds into this very complex, dark past of having essayed by someone that she thought she knew. I mean, it's a very complex storyline. I don't want to unpack it all for you all here, but for a long time, her background very much shapes every decision she makes, every relationship that she's trying to form, the trust she's trying to form with the other characters. Lily from Highgate Prep by Rosalie is another beautiful example of someone who comes from a very damaged background. And throughout the course of the series, we learn a little bit about why that background's even more dark and depraved than we thought it was. But
how she finds herself, right?
She finds herself and doesn't let herself be defined by her background, and still hold. I think what's really beautiful about the Lily character is that she still holds love for the people in her past, like her mother, the other two secondary characters from her past that worked at the strip club.
Her mom's best friend and her boyfriend.
Best friend and the boyfriend. She doesn't blame them or hold them in any way in anger for the weirdness, the depravity of her past. And then a third example of this is Rory from your favorite.
Watch Me Burn. Go Rachel, go.
And her her complex background, her complex emotions. She deals with a variety of both mental and emotional growth,
and sexual and physical abuse. Like she was abused.
Growth that you don't see quite a bit. It's hard to fall in love, and I mean, like, obviously we root for the heroine quite a bit, but when the heroine has and makes so many what is perceived as terrible decisions based on their past, it's hard for a reader who doesn't invest in dark romance to understand that you're going to be taken on a journey with these characters. So I think you tell us a little bit more about the men of dark romance.
So I think that, and I'm just going to touch on what you just said for a second because I think it plays into it. Dark romance is huge now. It's bigger than it's ever been before. It's definitely more acceptable. There's definitely a safe space aspect to it, and like recognizes like. So when you find another reader who embraces what you like you already have bonds. And I think that it's safe to say Not that I have numbers to back this up, I do not, but I think it's safe to say that you will find in the readers who embrace darker romances, and I don't mean darker elements necessarily, I mean truly dark and depraved books. I think you'll find that a lot of us have our own trauma that we have had in the past and that we have, worked through, or we see it and work through it as we go through these books. And so there's a whole nother layer of camaraderie and that sense of community in that world that's, I think, more than in, say, the fluffy romances and the rom-coms and the sweet, you know what I mean? Like, it's just different. So when we talk about these dark characters and being drawn to them, it mirrors life for a lot of us, right? I see, like, if we're talking about Rory specifically, I didn't go through the craziness she went through, but she was assaulted as a kid. And so I identify with that. And then watching her go through her journey, I kind of identify with that part of it, because sometimes you feel like your hair is on fire and you can't catch a break, right? Not to the same degree as the characters in the book, but you feel like the empathy and the compassion, because she's just trying to work through trauma and figure out how to do that in her space. So I think that when you read a dark romance specifically, because that's what we're talking about, and it does tie into the experiences that we've had or the emotions that we've experienced, I think it automatically like brings that book into our psyche, and then it becomes our story in a way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you take ownership.
For sure. And so watching characters go through their own internal struggle, right? That is something else that we identify with. And I think it makes the story even more robust for us, because you're rooting for them, even though they're problematic, even though they make some shitty decisions.
Yeah. Sometimes they're
like, don't do it again. And they do it again.
And I'm just like, what? And you're like, just go with it. Just go with it.
So the irony in this piece, we didn't talk about this in prep exactly, but the irony right in the second is that you just went through most of the Lord series by Chantal Tessier or Tessier, and those first 3 books, the female characters are like, ugh.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? You were messaging me and be like, oh, when are they going to do something?
But, and you were like, no, just stick with it. Just stick with it. Keep going. And those of you who are struggling also to stick with it, know that build is for a reason.
Yes, it is. So
yes, problematic characters.
Yeah.
In Lords.
Yeah, for sure. And so what we see a lot is we'll see those lines blur, right? We'll see the lines blur between right and wrong, between morality and immorality. And it challenges what we call conventional norms, right? Because romance always gets a bad rap anyway. As soon as someone finds out you're a romance reader, they discount who you are, and it's like you're not reading anything real, and there's no substance, and it doesn't matter. Like, that's just the vibe that society has about it. They shit on romance all the time. But once they find out what you like if you like the taboo and the dark and the whatever, they look at you differently, and they're like, what? Right?
Yes.
They do. So it definitely,
especially the why choose. Like, you'll get a person who's like, oh, I read the fantasy, or I read the royals, or I mean, like, but we do the same thing when somebody says they like shapeshifters or paranormal. We're like,
because it's not our thing.
Oh, it's a choice. We support your choice.
Well, we'll just dig into this for a second. We'll dig into this for a second. It's not, we didn't go over it, but like, okay, so regular paranormal, it's not really our thing, not because we hate it or we have bad feelings about it. It's just not, it doesn't appeal to us, and that's okay. But we always have words with each other when it comes to like the monster shifters and the octopus tentacles, and like, we laugh at that because it's hilarious.
The doorknobs
and the doors, and the pillows, all these things become sexual entities somehow. Like, we always have plenty to say about that. So, talking
Well,
about
speaking of all of that, let's talk about the flaws and imperfections,
yeah,
specifically of dark romance characters, but we can own our own as well. It's
yeah, for
always
sure.
healthy to own your own flaws and imperfections. Dark romance characters frequently always possess flaws like obsession, impulsivity, criminal tendencies. We've got some
If they're good,
sexual
no.
tendencies that are my favorite. So sexual tendencies.
Yeah.
They're generally the men, specifically in dark romance, are usually dominant alpha males who are kind of emotionally closed off. They have uncontrollable tempers and unreasonable expectations of the female character. My favorite is always when the female character in dark romance gets frustrated because like she has to stay locked in whatever beautiful amazing compound the dark male owns, and then she's like, I need freedom, and I'm like, bitch, you don't. You're so lucky you get to stay home and watch TV.
And no pants. You don't have to wear pants.
Ma'am, he don't even make you wear underwear. You ain't doing the laundry and you ain't cooking. Shut the fuck up.
Live your life, man. Live your life.
That, friends, is a literal text that I have sent to MyDys around 2 a.m. But there are a lot of these fights of these flaws, right? And so one of the ones that I love the most, or that we see occur quite often with an overarching theme in these characters and their flaws, is a fight against power, right? Usually it's like, my father's business, I'm in the secret cult of power that runs the whole world and nobody knows about it. And it's often seen as a flaw in these male characters or these female characters. For instance, Rory and Lexi are fighting to maintain their power within their empires.
And Watch Me Burn. Yeah.
In Watch Me Burn. And then Lexi is... all I can think of is Spanish Mafia. Lexi is not Spanish, but Latin. Lexi.
Which Lexi?
Isn't her name Lexi?
Which book?
The one where she's the head of like the Italian or Latin Empire. That's not.
Oh, you mean Lex?
Lex, yeah.
Alexa. From Riches to Riches.
Riches to Riches.
Ames Mills.
That's what I was trying to get. Thank you. Those two characters are fighting to maintain their power.
Yeah.
But most of the male characters generally are fighting to either free themselves from the power or right the wrongs of the power that they possess. Give us some examples of dark romance characters who wear these flaws proudly.
So we talked about this in prep, and we love these guys. Like, you don't want to love them. These are the guys you want to hate so bad, but we don't. We love them. We're broken and twisted, and we accept that freely. One of the first ones that came to mind was Tyrant from Fear Me, Love Me by Lilith Vincent. He is gloriously and wonderfully broken. He is a travesty on legs, but we love him so much because somehow she worked her magic, and you start out being like, what is this guy's deal? And she helps you hate him. Like she sets you up so he's a vile human, but then she takes you on his arc, and by the end of the story, he's everything. Like he's one of our favorite guys, and he is broken. Right.
Very much so.
So he's one of those who just accepted who he was, and then he used his own darkness, his own depravity, to help his female character come into her own and accept herself. And so she used his darkness as a light to guide his woman to finding herself. That's amazing.
Oh, I love the way you put that.
It's amazing. Like it was a beautiful, beautiful thing, and a whole lot of sexy ass packaging. So there's Tyrant. I think one of the other ones that we talked about was Dex in Riches to Riches. Right. He is a broken man, and he starts out in the story, he can't be touched due to his past stuff, which we won't get into because we don't want to spoil. And so in some ways he was a little bit of an asshole, right? Like, it not intentionally, it's just that he has trauma. And so weaving his story through everyone else's story in Riches to Riches, and then seeing him find his place and then just finally accept the trauma that he's lived through. It's just, when it's done right, it's so powerful.
It's captivating.
Yeah. Yeah. And it gives you hope. It's not just the sexy part, although we love that. Let's be honest. We all love that. But it's one of the reasons why we love the books that we love, because you see humanity at its worst, and then you see people fight their way out of that. And that's just the human connection. It's beautiful.
So what about the ones that don't actually make the arc?
Like, okay, so one of the ones that came to mind immediately for us was Rage from Wrath of Rage. That's the Watch Me Burn series by R.E. Bond. It is one of our favorite series. It's the first series we ever reviewed. That book was a struggle to get through. And not because of her writing, because her writing is chef's kiss, but he's such a complicated, complex character. And he is a terrible human. Like,
and we even noted it. I remember in the review, we even noted it. Like, we were like,
yeah, we warned people for sure.
You all, if you aren't dark, like noir dark, this might be the one that you get a synopsis on. Like, message us and we'll tell you what happens.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have a redemptive arc. He does not have a true redemptive arc.
No, he doesn't.
Just kind of stays ragey.
But see, that's the other side of it, right? His female character, his female counterpart, she saw something in him. And even though he was terrible to her, he made terrible things happen to her.
Oh yeah.
And she saw through it into who he was inside, or who he was struggling to be. And that was enough. Like, the rage at the end of the story is still rage. He's still a fucked up human. He's still
angry,
terrible, but he's in love, and she just accepts him for who he is. And there's something so magical about that. Just accepting someone for who they are and where they are, and just going forward.
Right.
It's hard.
And that segues into our next piece, the redemption arc, the journey to love, right? So she went on her own journey of love. But for most of these morally gray characters, most of these dark romance characters, they undergo a transformation, or they seek redemption through acts of goodness or acts of goodness.
Yeah.
Very good.
Lots of those.
Goodness. Goodness me. I often clutch my pearls. These character evolutions are central in the theme to dark romance, and they are what add the depth to the narrative and the plot. Zoe Blake does this beautifully. I actually went onto her site when we were in prep to try to find the book that I was trying to describe to you, and I'm looking at her different series, and that's what she does. Like, these are the Cavalieri series, the Ivanov crime family series, all of these series. That's what she does so beautifully well, is she takes these characters, both male and female, who you just really are made not to like or love, and pulls them through this beautiful journey, to where at the end they still hold true to their very strong character values of, the word is not possessiveness, but you don't realize that a lot of this tenacity, it plays into their family values. So now, by the end of a lot of these books, they have a family and they have the same passion and protectiveness. That was the word I was looking for. Protectiveness and tenacity and obsession for their families, while still going out and getting the job done.
Killing all the people.
Killing all the people who do the bad things, taking over empire.
Who do the worst things. I don't know.
Who does worse things, but still having that emotional depth and darkness. that we love. Like mostly they just take that, they either take that darkness to the streets or they take the darkness to the sheets.
Or both, and we love it all. Love it all.
What are some of the other redemptive arcs that you really loved?
Um, where they are redeemed or where they're not redeemed?
Where they are redeemed.
So some of the ones that that we love, when we talked about the Lord series, that's one where they're terrible, shitty ass humans, and
we're
by
literally
the end,
bred. That's the thing, is like,
yeah,
the
they're raised that way intentionally.
The prologue of every chapter, and even I noticed this in the end. Now that I'm 4 in, now I'm 4.
Yeah, you're on Carnage, the last one that's out right now.
I realize now all of the epilogues are circles. They're circles. Silical that they have kids, and the kids are like, yeah, we want to be lords, and like the cycle is going to continue, but with this element of understanding that they're raising a different kind of lord.
Yeah, some of the other ones that we've seen and that we love that does this, Rosalie is amazing at this. Every one of her series, they have tragically tragic female characters who are strong, badass women, but they come from trauma. And then you have the male characters who are forced into a life where they're shitty humans just trying to live and do what's expected of them, or not even what's expected of them, but really what they're forced to do. And so you start out, like, for example, if we're talking about Highgate Prep, we're talking about those 4 guys, and they each have their own role in this corporation, whatever they have. And in the beginning, we really only like one of them at the open of the story, right? And that's because he's cute and he's funny and in whatever. But then as we learn about all 4 of them, and you get to the point where you really go deeper into Ash's story, who's the biggest asshole out of all of them for a lot of the series, you just fall in love with him. And that's because of the trauma that he comes from, the fact that he guards his heart so fiercely. And then when we finally peek in, as Lily gets to peek in, like, you go with her on that journey. And so that's how she catches us, she being Rosalie in this case.
But that's how, and that's again why we love dark romance, right? Because the authors are these beautiful crafters of complex characters, complex relationships. They make these characters with flaws, but still maintain our empathy throughout the book.
For sure.
They use internal monologues. They use character-driven narratives to do this. It's how we respond to these characters that make them so complex and relatable. And that's just the beauty of the author on the part. I know that we talked about this earlier, but like, again, Tyrant is is like, I cannot even believe people are just starting to get on board with Tyrant too, right? Because our Love Me, Fear Me is the actual name of the book, but we just call it Tyrant because the
Fear Me, Love Me.
Fear Me, Love Me. The whole character is the emotional journey of this book. It's the redemptive arc. It's the driving force. It's it's so weird to start a book and just absolutely abhor a character. And by the end, we're like waving the flag of love anywhere we can on the internet about, like, you slid onto somebody's Instagram.
I'll tell the story. The story. So Mal Reeds, who's a TikToker, she's a book talker, and she was talking about the cover. And so she said the cover kept popping up in her reel or in her feeds and whatever, but it scared her because the cover, his face is like very, very strong and whatever. And I was like, a lot of us did it, but I was like, you have to read this book. And remember when you told me to read it, I was like, I don't know. I was not convinced, but I was definitely.
I was sending you messages in my car, like, I'm not okay. I haven't been able to drive home.
Yeah, so I did read it and I was like, I mean, hooked, like from the start, just hooked. And so Mal reads, she read it, and then she did one of her book reviews on it, and she was like a stan. She was like, I never knew I liked this in male characters. This is not normally. She's like, I didn't know I had a breeding kink, but obviously I do, because that shit was hot. And then she went on a Lilith Vincent like journey with a lot of her other books. So when I
So
see
jealous
that
because I'd love
happen,
to start that journey again.
when I see that happen for other people who feel what we feel from a book, I feel so validated. As
Mm-hmm.
someone who talks about books, we do all the time with other readers and giving recs. When we see people make the connection based on something that we've said, even though 5 million other people said it to her too, but whatever. It's just such an amazing feeling. I loved it so much. It was just perfection. It's beautiful. And Tyrant, if you haven't read that book, read that book. Ignore the scary cover if you feel like it's scary. Read the book.
Ignore your feels in the first like 4 chapters.
Just keep going. That's our advice.
Feels
just
in the
keep
first 4
going.
chapters are going to be really complicated. Some other, we see these complex character and these beautiful author craftsmanships a lot when we say dark romance, but we see it in bully romances.
Yeah.
We see it in academy. You had some examples of places that we see this kind of dark romance that people may not realize that they see it. The Grumpy Sunshine category.
Yeah. Well, yes. So in our world, at least, you will find a lot of the times that the grumpy guys or girls, whatever, they're obviously that way for a reason. Normally there's trauma associated with it. People are not generally just a cranky ass, sometimes, but not normally in books. Normally there's a reason. So one of the ones that was really grumpy for a long time, I think for me, was Zane in The Riches to Riches.
Mm-hmm.
And I love him. He's one of my favorites. I love him so much. I love him so much.
I think of Shane from Sadie Kincaid's Ryan.
Yes.
New York Ruthless series, the Ryan series. He is virtually unlikable. That's his whole shtick. Is like he doesn't want anybody to like him. He doesn't need any.
Well, Ash was that way too.
Yep, Ash was that
Ash way. and Cap. Yeah. I mean, it's something that we love, which we may not even have realized that we love it, but.
But and I think about, because I have a lot of friends that won't read dark romance, but I've read books that they've also read, and I think about, there's one that's really popular. I want to say it's called Ignite Me, I think, and but the grumpy. There's also like the one that's like Daddy Next Door, or something like that. There's one that's really popular. I believe it's by Penelope Douglas.
Okay.
Birthday Girl. That's it. Birthday Girl.
I haven't read that.
Is not dark. Birthday Girl is very popular among the romance and especially the book talk community, and it's a grumpy character who is actually very dark and complex and mirrors a lot of the same qualities of dark romance characters, and people love it because this guy goes on this journey in this redemptive arc, and they're like, oh, he does this whole thing. Even in the Kate Stewart's characters go on this whole redemptive arc, and her particular series is not considered dark, but it's the same journeys that we all go on every day here in our dark empire.
Yeah.
And that kind of leans into our next portion, which is about the genre having a difference and impact everywhere, right? So we're starting to see more dark romance pop up on BookTok. People are starting to play with their dark side, to have a safe space to explore that dark side. We're seeing more people trying to get into BookTok by acting dark and brooding and writing. I love when authors are over on BookTok and then they bring it over and they're like, this guy is a whole inspiration, like for one of my characters. Like, I want to write this character. And we're like, yes, please write this character. Yeah. Like, I'm waiting for the Jack Harlow Rubik's Cube guy, the Love
Mr. Sexy.
I want him. I don't ma'ams and sirs who are writing dark romance. I need that character. I need that character.
Now you know we're gonna clip this and we're gonna send it. We're gonna tag everybody that we want to cover it.
Please and thank you. But I mean, we talked about this in prep. This is what I'm loving about dark romance is that it started Den of Vipers, Haunting Adeline. There's one that's really popular right now that people are just falling over themselves over. That's a little bit older. Ooh, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but we've read it and it's dark. It's dark. There's whole TikToks pages that are literally dark romance with millions
Instagram
of followers.
too, for sure. Yeah.
And Instagram too, with millions and millions of followers. And I know that you love that concept of playing safely in the dark.
Yeah, for sure.
Because
we are building communities, but like recognizes like, and I can't say it enough, when we feel, when we see someone else who enjoys the same things as us and their minds are open to it, because that's really all it is. It's just opening your mind to something that might be a little bit outside of your comfort zone. And we embrace that, like fully and truly embrace that. So when you see other badass women who do the same thing, they're owning who they are. They're owning their sexuality. They're owning what they like. And they're like, fuck the noise. And there's something so empowering and so beautiful in a group of women, not fighting, not being bitchy, not worried about makeup and hair and whatever, just living their lives and embracing their power. It sets us off. Like, it is just amazing. And when you find authors who feed into that as well, like, you know, that's who they are as well, it's even better. Yeah. Like I'll be honest, this is a little bit off topic, but kind of not. I was listening to S.J. Tilley's and Kat Wynn's most recent episode of their podcast, Tall, Dark, and Fictional. And they ended up talking about like real life topics and their position on Gaza, for example. And they just owned what they believe. And it was so empowering because, right, we get silent sometimes just because we're women, because we're romance readers, because of whatever. And so when you really find those women who are strong in who they are and they're strong in their opinions and they say what they need to say and they don't give a fuck what anyone else says, it is so empowering that I'm like She-Ra, like, it's it's the best. It's the best.
But I think it speaks to creating safe space and safe community, right? Because we don't recognize, I mean, like, I told this story in prep, so I'm going to tell you it now. But like one time I was riding in a car with a bunch of women and we happened to get on the topic of some very, very hot human being, male human being. And they're all like, oh yeah, he's so hot. And I was like, I'd let him spit in my mouth. And the car went crickets. And all I could think was, oh, not in my safe space. Not in my safe space. Right. Because when we're around,
Michelle is not here.
Yeah, Michelle is not here. Pam Snacks was there, but she was driving. So she probably didn't even, it doesn't even faze her when I say things like that anymore because she's just so used to it. But it speaks to, like, in those spaces, you know, one of the things that I hear a lot is that we're not listening to each other anymore. We're not learning from each other anymore. We're just standing on opinion. And when we're in those safe spaces, I got to like talk to these women then and open the opportunity of the door to be like, oh no, yeah, like this is some dark degradation shit that's actually super really fun, you know, and they just continued to stare at me like I was crazy. But
I would have been like, you do not know what you're missing.
Right. But that's the beauty of reading these dark romance characters and trusting these authors to take us on these journeys of these dark romance characters, because we see pieces of ourselves in these romance characters. We want to go on the journey. We want to invest in them, and we trust for the most part. Sometimes I don't fall. Sometimes I have to gut check with you about if I'm trusting the right thing here. But we trust each other in these communities to lead us on these cathartic personal journeys that end up empowering us in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm not saying I'm getting a breeding kink anytime soon, but
not for yourself, but you'd love to read it.
If I have friends that are into it, like you're trying to,
jam it back up there. That's the thing.
I'm definitely passing those ones on to them. Speaking of passing on those ones to them, let's talk about our Muse books.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about it. You go first, because yours is exciting.
So we've been waiting for this for so long, it seems like, but finally and truly, Hans by S.J. Tilley is here, and it is the final book in the Alliance series, which makes me sad.
That is sad. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm way behind the ball. I'm just getting to Sadie Kincaid's release in November, The Perfect Fit. I'm very excited. I got stuck. Oh my gosh. So now
when I tell you, girl, it is my favorite Sadie Kincaid book ever. And you know, that's a lot. I like it more than, like, I love it more than the Ryans. It's everything. Ugh.
High praise. Well, if you have opinions on dark characters that we didn't hit, we'd love for you to find us on our socials. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, BookBub, Goodreads. Did I get them all?
I think so. Instagram
and here YouTube. On YouTube. Yeah. Here on YouTube, where you're currently hanging out with us. You can find us in those spaces. We'd love to hear about the dark romance characters who have sent you on a journey. And with that, we have embarked on this journey together. Thank you. These intricate worlds of dark fucking. I fucked that, didn't I?
Underproduced. Just keep it moving.
I was trying to get it back on track, when the fucking wheels came off. All right. So with that, we've embarked on a riveting journey through the intimate world of character development in dark romance. Your turn.
We've explored the depths of multifaceted characters with dark past and the psychological allure that keeps us enchanted and coming back for more.
Oh, did we do that? I don't remember. As we conclude this episode, we encourage you, our cherished viewers, to share your thoughts. Let us know in the comments what draws you to the complex characters in dark romance, and what
good and bad.
What, see, that's where I was at. I fucking just jumped the whole shark to that piece. What characters in dark romance and what redemption arcs have left you
breathless? All of them. Panting.
I don't know. Yeah. Steaming up your own windows.
As we do. Mom in a yoga parking lot. Or yoga mom in a parking lot.
Mom in a parking lot. All right.
Yeah.
Your turn.
Join us next week as we dive into a thrilling dive of smutty and thought-provoking world of romantic literature.
Ooh.
Until then, may your reading be as enticing as the dark romances we've discussed today.
Oh. Thank you for being a part of our passionate community. Hey, what are we talking about next week?
We are talking about the role of secondary characters in romance. And I can't wait for that, because no romance is just two people. I don't care who says what.
No, and that's really fitting, because I totally fucking forgot two very important characters in the Rosalie world.
We'll continue that one next week. Just don't forget.
All right. Thank you for being here. Have a glorious day. Bye.